I guess it's 2/12. Is it Lincoln's birthday? Yeah, it is. 2024. Using the mobile device, and so we'll see what works. Earlier we tried YouTube, and they kind of throttle you after about 30 minutes, or they just cut you off if you say something worth hearing. Chat should be open. It looks like we're on 1, 2 of the tube channels, and then Twitch, DLive, Odyssey, and that should be it. Okay, cool. I don't know about the sound quality. The main thing I'm worried about here is buffering. We'll probably cover the same we talked about earlier. I don't have wrenches handy, but I'll take note of anybody that comments. We had a new shooter. This was the Lakewood Church. Sadly, Joel Olstein wasn't there at the time. And this was another trans shooter, which I predicted is a target marketing operation where they realized that to sell the PSYOP to the right, they had to custom engineer a villain that they would see as problematic, because they're not troubled by the Nick Cruzes who wear MAGA hats and preach Nazism. They're not troubled by those who are ostensibly on their side, who are scapegoated as part of them. They just blame mental illness, but they mostly shrug it off because they say this is the price of having the Second Amendment. It's an acceptable loss. Pro-vax people are about side effects. Like, it's an acceptable loss. You can't expect it to be perfect. There's going to be some people that have reactions, etc. You just kind of ignore it. And the gun people are the same way with AR-15s or guns. So the concept here, though, the parallel, I think, though, is that the story now, anyway, with these shooters is, in order to target the right, they've made it anti-Christian. So since Audrey Hale, they've made it a point about Christianity. And you'll notice they've ramped up the satanic panic. And that's been spearheaded by Jack Posobiec. And that's all, of course, because he's from Pizzagate, which is, again, a reboot of the satanic panic. And this whole story, satanic panic, has to do with the traditional concept of trad right. And we're seeing evidences of the trad right. They're trying to preserve cultural heritage, traditionalism. And that's why you've got Elon Musk trying to buy Disney right now. But the traditional view of sin involves, morality, and it spreads through social contagion. And the consequence of not getting rid of your sin is probably judgment, maybe a flood, like Noah's flood. But then on the other side, of course, they don't believe in that concept because they don't believe in God or sin. But they've accepted a modern replacement, which is analogous to it, just the virus. Not a coincidence that the other side, the trad side, doesn't believe in the progressive side version of sin. So we're fighting over religions here. One of them is more science fiction-y and definitely couched in science, but it's the same holy war. And the other side just is glomming onto traditional versions. This is why the role of this Taylor Swift, is so interesting here. I was going to say Taylor LaVey, because the news has been dominated by Taylor LaVey and Travis Cringe. I mean, that was such a display yesterday. I watched it. The main thing here, though, is, we're not predicting specific doom and gloom or doomsday scenarios. However, we're analyzing the stories as they're unfolding, as they tell them, not as we are, plugging them into a pre-configured script. So, for example, I didn't know anything about Taylor Swift, and I'm like looking at these headlines. I'm like, wait, they just mentioned her in this Amelia Earhart story. Now they're saying she's related. Now they're saying Earhart was the Swift of their time. So I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing. They're doing what they've done with others, which they do with others all the time, like Musk, etc., which is to superimpose established characters and archetypes over these world stage characters. They layer them on. Like Musk as Willy Wonka / Tony Stark Iron Man / Werner von Braun. And there's a few others we could throw in there. Probably even Henry Ford. You could layer a Henry Ford archetype, or narrative, like arc, onto Musk's life. There's even the Tesla is kind of a forced thing. But anyway, my point of it is, Swift has been connected with several uh, dead female icons who died at young ages, whether Marilyn Monroe, uh, Amelia Earhart, Princess Diana. And so we're just looking at these stories as they're unfolding. Well, I watched the thing, and the main takeaway seems to be, um, she's hanging out with some friends who are flaunting the satanic hand signs, probably to antagonize the right. I'm like, wait a minute here. Why is she? I mean, I understand she's friends with other professionals at her level. So she's hanging out with Ice Spice, whose name is Isis, interestingly, who's sitting there in black holding a chalice. And when the camera focuses, you see Swift taking a swig of something. At the same time, Ice Spice is doing a double fisted devil hand sign thing, and she has a very prominent upside down cross. So, from the perspective of the people who are already predisposed to see Taylor Swift as serving the deep state, serving Satan, we're talking about the satanic, panic infused right, who've already seen her as, an incarnation of Barbie feminism, everything that MAGA stand is against. You could see why these would be like triggering symbols. So, my question would be, because this was something you couldn't not see, it was planted there. What does it mean that Taylor LaVey, and she looks like that, she does have a resemblance, and I don't think it's coincidental. Why was she taking some kind of swig from a chalice while her friend is making these gestures? And the truthers are talking about this on Twitter like crazy. Like high level influencers like Stu Peters, they're all mentioning it because it's worth mentioning it. And if you mention it, they look at you like you're crazy. And I'm saying, okay, well, what's crazier? To mention what's in front of your face, or to pretend you're not seeing it because nobody knows how to explain it? Like, what is actually legitimately crazier? Okay, look at this. Diana South says Ed Markey co-authors bill to prevent having armed church security. Congress to outlaw church security teams came out just a few days before the church shooter. Fascinating timing. I mean, if you think about it, they had this militia guy, Justin Moan, with his Moan's militia, telling people to go shoot up the border or shoot up feds. And this was right after there's this bill that has to do with some kind of regulation of militias. The long and short of it is, these are like PR stunts to help sell political agendas. That's what they are, political PR stunts. I mean, what event doesn't fit this profile? That's one of the first things I look for. What's the hallmark of something we're presuming to be a psyop? Is the main one anyway, is some obvious, implementable political objective and agenda with a bunch of people to sell it, usually with tears. Let me go through your comments. N.A. Litera says Miss Hot Potato is alive. Don't know what you're talking about there. Clockwork 113, thanks for joining. Yeah, I was out with a fever, but I actually I won't say I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the worst time. I got a break. It was kind of like isolation. I thought my brain was going to overheat. Like the movie Hot Skull got me thinking about that whole concept. And the most useful part of it, though, was just kind of thinking about what to do next and how to proceed. It was just kind of reflective because I couldn't really move. I think it was Disease X. And it took out my computer. And thankfully, we had someone hook us up and replace it, because my computer, and I'd take it to a shop to get it fixed. But it had just inexplicably broken down. I'm looking at this computer screen. I'm like, what happened? Did a goldfinch break in here dressed up like a ninja? My computer. And now I'm thinking maybe he spread some kind of biological waste, some kind of hazardous material on something on the doorknobs. Who knows? Maybe I got hit. Maybe that was meant to take me out. Probably not. I mean, it was just a fever, but it was just enough to get me to sit there and review Autohoaxology 101. I have a few new terms to add in there as well. But here's the other thing that I've been picking up on. And JLB commented on this in a very hilarious way on Twitter. There's a lot of people on Twitter right now who are doing what I'm calling false flag predictions. And I'm not doing false flag predictions. The false flag is a stimulated event. You got some patsy, somebody framed, or somebody framed somebody else for doing something bad. The underlying premise is something, a violent act, a terror attack. Every single one of these bills claiming to have the secret calendar predicting events are predicting real events. They're saying, yeah, the mass casualty event, a lot of people are going to die on this date, and I can tell by looking at a calculator in gematria and scrambling these words, and then I compare it to these calendar dates and how many days apart they are. Now, these aren't anything more than confirmation bias apps. These are not objective ways of determining anything. It's like using a Ouija board. Would you trust somebody if they used a Ouija board to tell you what's going to happen next? And that has nothing to do with what we are doing here, which is really just looking at the news media as an informed audience, including in our perspective the facts of what media really does and what it actually incorporates into its supposed reportage, specifically movie magic, crisis liars, etc. Not to mention they're operating from a worldview that's basically built on a lot of lies, and its parameters are very suspect. But anyway, we're looking at these people who are using these supposed calculators to predict these big events, and so nothing happened. So all these big channels who claim, hey, look, if you count back from the Super Bowl 6,666 months, you get this. Okay, my question now is, how do you determine which numbers are meaningful? Is it because they're repetitive, double digits, triple digits? What is it in particular that makes these things? Because when I'm looking at their symbolism, or we're looking at how things generally appear, it seems to be that they definitely use astrology. And that's based on the year, of course, 365 days. But what I'm seeing is a lot of interesting permutations, I'll say, which sometimes can get a little ambiguous. 8 months or 6 months and 66 days. It gets to be a little like a little too easy to prove any day significant in advance. And that's really not good enough if it doesn't work. And it didn't work when they were predicting Trump's head wound on 8/4. It hasn't worked on any of these major dates. And so what I'm suggesting here is that, yeah, I appreciate people's research, and I notice patterns. I think it's interesting, especially when it comes to narrative threads that are being woven onto the world stage. However, when I look closer at a lot of these various types of false flag predictors, one, they're predicting real events, and two, many of them have a Bible in their fist. And I'm not against the Bible, but they're framing everything as they're decoding the deep state, the cabal, Satan, and it gets a little too simplistic. Commenter says, I used a Ouija before, knew some creepy stuff about the now, nothing about the future. Interesting. I think I might have messed around with those before. It's I think kind of a bit of suspension of belief. The idea of mediumship, I don't necessarily dispute it. I've read some horror stories or books that are purported to be accounts of people who have used Ouija boards and invited things in, like a summoning thing. And having studied magic in theory, magical philosophies, various ones, and even the various forms of divination, I don't think there's anything about the Ouija board that is wrong necessarily, or wouldn't work if one were attempting. But it's easy to manipulate would be my problem, I suppose. But you wouldn't really hear about people getting good intel. Maybe some of the people who have really great ideas are secretly using a Ouija board in their offices up in their buildings. Okay, Ollie Goering says, remember triangle and one eye phobia? Those were the days. Well, see, it evolved. It went from they're using the Super Bowl halftime show to use like to show something, symbols, rituals, etc. And before that, it was mostly political messaging. But then it became the more occult stuff, which became more obvious, but it was always there. But now it's advanced. Like, this is something that has to be pointed out. In the last year, there has been a major surge in people who are actually being skeptical about the NFL as they would be of WWE. Like, this is something that's irreversible. Like, they're losing audiences. But I wouldn't mock people necessarily for noticing the symbols. There's something about it. I mean, there's a possibly a hidden motive. Part of it might be maintaining the split between traditional moral panic and then the pandemic panic of the progressives. Redacted says, "What's up with the new YouTube video format?" Um, I'm streaming off my phone, and I realized if I stream off my phone, YouTube cuts us off, and they give us terrible service. But if I use Restream, it works fine. Tim Osman says, "Actually, been hearing about the rigged NFL over and over again." Yeah, I guess if you can go along with rigged election theories, rigged football's next. But now that's a big thing. It's been mainstreamed. Lean Dion says, seemed to be several deep descript decoders propped up just after JL26 made some claims. Yeah, exactly. That was a big one too. They try to co-opt JL and they don't give him credit. And I called some of them out on it. I'm like, okay, so here's what's happening for sure, in my opinion. They do know that they're going to pull off these fake events, and they're building up towards it with predictive programming. So they tip off their assets, their agents, and they say, okay, let's hype up this. And they may not know, but my point of it is, I think they have to fill up the field with their people giving these alternate explanations so that nobody can hear the people calling it fake. We're just looking at rabbit trails, various rabbit trails. But the thing with the numbers and stuff is what I've been kind of focusing on, because I've always had an issue with gematria. Like, somebody like, oh, look, the guy's name is this and it adds to this, therefore it's a hoax. Like, I'm sorry, but that's kind of that's not a valid way to deter. Like, one of the things that used to annoy me was when Russian vids, is he Ukraine vids now? Didn't he? I think he transitioned into Ukraine vids. His main thing was, if you see the color orange on a news story, the story's fake. I'm like, what? And if you see a dome shape, it's because the earth is flat. And this was like his framework. So any story he looked at could be interpreted as as a hoax and the elite mocking you about the earth being a flat disk with a dome. And I was like, okay, you're kind of um, following your own bias, or you're using a bias confirmation app. So I refer to gematria calculators as bias confirmation apps. Like, if you want to find somebody's name in 666, you just got to go for the right calculator to get there. Like, that's not how this should work. But this new niche of online false flag predictors are using calendars and days between events, which again, these may be there, but it's not the same as necessarily as intentionally, well, things that are more easily observable. Like, I can point to specific dates, times, events. It's a little more difficult to make the case if you're like, well, you got to add these two names first. Like, for example, someone had pointed out Brock Purdy adds to 126 or something like that, or 216 or something. Yeah, I think it was 216 if you add the letters of the name in some calculator, and therefore meant something. And I'm like, how did he arrive at that number? How did he know that that was a calculator to use? And this just sounds insane. Just to anybody who's like not deep in the weeds, this sounds insane, which may even be part of it. I'm wondering, are they even perhaps intentionally injecting a great deal of noise to dissipate the signal? And that is a tactic. It's an active measure, is what you would call it. We may be living through an active measure to nullify any kind of script decoding. And to say that we're wrong just because we don't have this, we don't have the script. You see, we're outsiders. We picked up things. Nobody told us. You're not supposed, it's a conspiracy theory, officially speaking, that they do simulated mass casualty events and present them as reality through news as a form of sustained perpetual psychological warfare. And it's not just the casualty events. There are so many various variations. I call it the PSYOP entertainment complex for a reason. Diana South says they're FBI trying to spoil the raft. They too are actors. Well, look, entertainment is a substrate of the mind control. And guess what? So is politics. That's the hard thing to understand for most who aren't willing to grasp the monolithic nature of it. And for those who've already figured out that the space program presupposes international cooperation on the big psyops, it's not a huge stretch. You know, the paradigm shock isn't there, but many people still have it. And I don't actually care to disabuse them of it. I've been saying today, I was like, you know what? Let the gap between the edge of the red pill gate-kept community and the off-world stage perspective remain wide. Let a bunch of people fall in the gap, but the whole point of it is we have to have a distinct separation for the time being until we reach a certain critical mass. Then we can merge back. But I have no interest to wake the sleepers. We have to only go for the people who've already figured out what skepticism means in 2024 in our hyper-mediated reality, which is a reality in which we have a shared consensus worldview that is easy to adapt to if you're Truman in a Truman Show, NPC like following the script. And those who don't follow the script quickly find, okay, there's something wrong here. But the problem with this is they've built a Truman Show with a show outside of it. And the one outside of it is a false awakening. On the right, it looks like a red pill nightmare verse. On the left, it's wokeism. And we have to escape the trap of the political horseshoe. And wokeism does not afflict the conspiracy theorists. It does not afflict the right at all, the truthers, the red pillars, but they have their own version of wokeism. That needs to be eluded. And I want to also point out that I'm making an absolute equivalency between CRT and CJT. These are equivalent things. What's up, Ellison Chains? I don't know if I can get you a wrench. The issue here is I'm on my phone, and so I don't have any way to access the YouTube control panel. My office internet is temporarily down, but I'll have it up in a few days. I was out of work for about 4 days. I was painting, but I haven't had time to list anything. But I didn't realize a lot of things kind of fell behind, but I'll catch up. Okay, let's continue. NA literalists, wake up the lions, forget the sheep. Yeah, and the sheep includes the blue pillars, the woke who cares, because they're on the other side of even attempting an escape from this thing. You see, there's a fundamental difference. Even though I'm equating critical race theory and critical Jew theory, you know, you're blaming some central scapegoat on either side. Even though I'm equating these two things, I would still argue that the woke side is worse for a few specific reasons. And mainly it has to do with their porous relationship with power and government and mind control. Like they are the ones who are actually in love with their captor, Stockholm syndrome. It's even more than that. They've merged. And what I mean is if you just look at the basic relationship, and this is the schism. And the reason for the schism is simply if they can get you fighting over 99 different issues that don't matter, then the one big issue that actually matters is easy to hide. So I've noticed that all the different things people are fighting over left and right, they all agree that we're going to Mars in a few generations. Well, look, Mars is space communism. Mars is grays, meaning a dissolution of all differences, all nations, all merged into one. The whole hive mind dystopian scenario. And that's being sold to both sides equally well. But the left is very porous, and that's to say, they embrace the alien. In fact, in the movie Asteroid City, they pray, "Dear alien who art in heaven," like Black Mass style reversal of the Lord's Prayer, but praying aliens, which is the replacement for angels for the progressives. But they're also saying, "Welcome to the illegal aliens, open the borders." They're saying, "Welcome to the injectable aliens, boost me more." They're saying, welcome to the home invader, take my guns. You see, there's no border that the people on the left won't tear down. And this is by design. They also want to tear down your internal borders, give your mind full access. We're talking about destruction of free flow of thought. You know, their fear of the mind virus, which suggests that having certain thoughts are therefore making you dangerous. They're kind of all about this complete, again, I say porous or transparent or open. But you contrast that with the right, closed borders, home self-defense through Second Amendment. And then, of course, you have closed dermatitis, skin border closed. And now they hate the aliens. The aliens are now dark and evil. You see how that works? Perfectly down the line. One side is embrace the alien, open up all borders. And the other side is close up against everything. Let nothing get past. So this is the general schism that we've been commenting on for some time that is designed to be permanent. There's never meant to be any kind of correction here. There's not going to be a unification. They never want everybody to be saved. It's always meant to be just split. All right, let's see here. Going through my comments. Isabel Ann says, today Mars at the last degree of Capricorn, the Olstein shooting connected to that energy. Now, is it Joe Olstein or Joel Osteen? Or Joe Olstein or Joe Osteen? I mean, there's 4 variants for this Mandela effect, in my opinion. Although there's only 2 canonically officially recognized by the Mandela Church of Stavely. They only recognize 2 versions of the Joel Olstein, the official version and 1 alternate. But I can imagine 4 different Mandela affected versions of that name. Ellison says, I think Trump is the Antichrist. Well, no, Trump is either the Antichrist or he's Christ. He's, well, at least as far as the world stage role he's been given. And it's like, well, he's kind of been given both. And it makes more sense Antichrist. If you look at the whole Damien Thorne, devil's advocate, not to mention just the ridiculous nature of Biff Tannen, Vegas, Sin City, all the movie star stuff. And then suddenly and then of course, 91 felony charges, mocking a rape accuser who's mentally ill. Like, look, if he's innocent, he's innocent. But mocking a mentally ill person like that is just bad PR. And it's almost psychopathic, at least his world stage character. But I'm saying that's not very Jesus-y, in my opinion. However, they're playing up this Jesus nature of his character, this martyr, like the way that they arrested him. And so they took his garments, talking about Jesus, and they ripped them up and they auctioned off the parts. Well, Donald Trump had his suit ripped up into 47 pieces and auctions it off, along with his Donald Trump playing cards or action hero cards, his Donald Trump Pokemon NFT cards. But like Jesus with his shredded garment, Trump had to do the same thing. And now, as far as, look, the mark of the beast and Elon Musk and the X, and, actually, to be honest, if we had to look at it from a thelemic perspective, which is, to me, the metascript, it's based on astrotheology and the changing of the age, or the aeon, as they call it, you would actually point at Musk. And the reason why is we're entering the age of Mars. And Mars, specifically with Musk, has some connections to Constantine, both emperor and the Russian rocket pioneer. And the X, of course, space X, the mark of the beast, the Neuralink, it's all there. Oh, nice. Copaesthetic says, new Lakewood shooter video has her in a hijab cringe singing about Trump and Palestine. Fascinating. Okay, I'd like to see that one. It's another trans shooter like Aubrey Hale shooting a Christian place up. So that's kind of a twist. Again, these are target marketed psyops. Isabel Ann says, I've been studying astrology for 14 years, done over 5,000 charts. It's all aligned and timed. I have a large stack of psyop chart printouts. So you can see the intent. Yeah, okay. I'm glad you brought it back to that really quick here. Because if there is any kind of relevance between these dates, it's going to be revealed, in my opinion, in the astrology, not necessarily the numbers, because I don't know how to determine what number correlations make it significant. And too many of them are beyond just ambiguous. It's almost like fluid. Like you could almost make anything fit. But there are astrological timings that would not be so flippant. Like, for example, someone mentioned 8:46 a.m. Mercury rising, 9/11 kicks off. I often refer to the 8:46 kneeling on George Floyd corresponding to the sun setting on 5/25/2020 in the Twin Cities at 8:46, because the sun setting ritualistically ties to the death of the Sun King, which was being portrayed by Floyd. So there's several layers, though, of meaning and correspondence that it's like, okay, the sun setting at the same time as the major number that's being chanted, and it has all these 9/11 connections. It's a little less specious than just saying it was this number of days. And those numbers always seem to be arbitrary. So I'm just trying to get rid of too much that's just arbitrary. Elephant Tusk says, I heard Donnie Darkin on Twitter Spaces with Ike. He came across as an unhinged Bible thumper. Yeah, I kind of talked to him yesterday, Donnie Darkin, and I deleted my tweet. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to get into it. But look, I don't trust a lot of people who throw the Bible around on Twitter. For to me, it's just virtue signaling. It's like, okay, like if you really believe this and you're so convinced that you go on to Tim Pool, you get your message to millions, but you're still hiding behind an image of Donald Trump with glowing eyes, I'm not really trusting you. It's like, if you like, look, if you really had the inside scoop about the rise of the Antichrist and the end of the world, don't you think you would at least put on an end is near sign and stand on a street corner, warn a few people? Wouldn't you want a little more attention? Not for the money, of course, but maybe to warn people like your grandmother, hey, look, I have some intel here. Trump's going to do this. You guys might not want to vote for him, but he's doing it behind a LARP. Like, let me put on my character mask and let me just word salad a bunch of Bible verses at you rapid fire. And if you don't agree, I'll castigate you. It's like, why don't we just focus on the facts? And here's the thing, he's super focused on one of the threads that does exist. So what I'm seeing here is that there are threads, narrative threads within the so-called meta script, which they use to color the zeitgeist, write our histories. They have people who will focus on one thread, but they don't separate it from the world stage. They're like, it's leading us to a real thing. They're still false flaggers. The shootings to them are still real. Okay, let's see. Trump is a master of good aliens. Yeah, look, the aliens, someone had mentioned in Discord, I thought this was fascinating. This kind of a seeming dichotomy between cowboys and aliens. And I'm like, wait a minute, cowboys and aliens. Because we've been talking about the meaning of aliens. Because look, you have multiple layers to it. You have space aliens who are scared of space aliens. The left want to be abducted and probed. The right think that the aliens are demons, and if they show up, they'll probably go after them with their MAGA caravans and shotguns. Who's against illegal aliens? The right. The left, open the borders. Who's against the injectable aliens? You see how this works? So there's this split between the sides. So it's kind of interesting that Elon Musk goes down to the border in a cowboy hat to go confront the aliens, to see the alien threat. And he's one of our, one of the main space popes. The unmediated mind says things have been extremely entertaining lately. Conspiratainment, entertaining. Conspiratainment used to be a bad word. Kind of like auto hoax. There were people say, oh, this is just conspiracy candy. It's like, oh, what? Because we're not drenching it in doom. It's not legit. Because people don't die. Because we're not stressed out. Because I'm not worried there's a problem. Give me a break. All right, let's see what else. Joined by Paradox, who has a really great and original comment that's totally funny. Anyway, this has been great. I'm just testing out this as a potential platform using Restream. I'll probably be using this for the next 24 hours. I have to catch up on a few things. I've been out for a few days, got to catch up on almost everything, but no big deal. It's going to be a late night. I might stick around here for a minute, but the issue here is I can't take, oh, they deleted the tweet. I want to watch that video, the shooter video. I think I might have seen a clip from it. But one final point on this. It's just a new construct that's worth pointing out. The most of the shooters have been like right wing, radicalized on Discord or 4chan or Telegram, and I guess BitChute a little bit, but it's a right wing thing or right wing sites that radicalize them, and they all kind of look the same. They wear MAGA hats or something, and they go shoot up schools, and the right doesn't care because they love guns, and that's an acceptable loss. But what they've done is they've switched it. They've made it so that the other side will care. And so what they've done is they've switched the bad guy in order to intimidate the right wing, and they've made them these anti-Christian trans shooters. And if you think about it, the moral pandemic, or what I call the moral panic, the Pizzagate, the panic on the right, would be more afraid of what? If you were to engineer something that would intimidate them the most. The one that's going against traditional values, beyond Barbie feminism, but going into gender ideology, and then targeting Christians. So you have that element to it. And with Audrey Hale, there were indications of it being also some kind of anti-white privilege, weirdly enough. Oh, MAGA hat shooters. Nick, you don't remember the video of Nick Cruz in his white underwear in his backyard with a MAGA hat, dry firing his pistol, and his neighbors are just recording from over the fence? Or you got Patrick Crusius, almost the same name, who was at the Walmart shooting what he thought were going to be immigrants. And he was another one of these motivated by MAGA values. My point of it is most of the shooters have had MAGA aligned motivations. White replacement theory motivated the Buffalo shooting to go shoot up the supermarket. He goes to a minority supermarket to kill people because, oh, I'm going to be replaced because I'm white. MAGA means essentially making America great again, reversing all the damage done by the left, the progressive agendas. So MAGA is basically threatened by immigration. So I'm saying that, yeah, I'm saying that if they're not wearing MAGA hats specifically, they have MAGA ideology. And this exists pre-MAGA. Dylan Storm Roof, before the storm was coming, before they even talked about storming the Capitol, Dylan Storm Roof was a template for this. They're like, oh, these are ideologically motivated shootings, but they're coming from far-right racist perspectives. And this is Brenton Tarrant, who based his whole manifesto, and he was the Christchurch one, and it was because of immigrants. That's why he shot up 2 mosques. His was based on Anders Breivik, same thing, shooting the people in the Labor Party to blame them for opening the floodgates to immigration. So to say that the mass shooters haven't been predominantly aligned with MAGA values shows you're not paying attention. The recent advent of the left ideologue shooters has just really been Aubrey Hale, the bank shooter, who was radicalized on Reddit, and then this recent one, and maybe a couple of others, but they've all been left. That's new. And it's usually because the left has been gunophobic, although that's no longer seemingly true. Hark says, allegedly the cops also wound up shooting the woman shooter's 7-year-old son as well that had some training. I'll look for that. Someone says, MAGA don't kill for ideas. Okay, well, tell that to Justin Moan, who chopped off his FBI father's head. Say that about a Q Warner, who blew up his thing. The other one who stabbed his kid 17. No, that was QAnon, sorry. I know there's a difference between QAnon and MAGA. But I'm saying, generally speaking, yeah. MAGAism, on the face of it, it looks like a good idea. But they're not talking about like the 80s or Reagan era, make America great. MAGA has explicitly jumped on board of Charlie Kirk, Nick Fuentes level white nationalism, even saying that they want to reverse the Civil Rights Act. Look at Turning Point USA. Now, I don't believe this is mainstream MAGA views, but this is what's coming from the top. This is what is being used to misrepresent everyone. Elephant Tusk says Osteen was smiles. Yeah, I saw Joel Osteen after the shooting, and I'm like, he's going full blown Robbie Parker. What's going on here? Is it the cosmetic surgery? Is it that he can't not smile, or is he legitimately experiencing some dose of duper's delight? There's something very demonic about that individual. I'm sorry, but Joel Osteen looks like the devil. Chad Jones says, I ain't buying this. Are you not buying the fake shooting at the Lakewood church? I wouldn't either. Look, unless you see blood, I wouldn't buy it. You have the main weapon of the power elite is fear. It's they don't and look up Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, specifically rule number 9. The threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing itself, and they can drag the threat out indefinitely. As long as you believe that they're one step away from nuking you, they can justify anything. Someone says Alstein is evil. Look, he's just a performer. I don't mean to knock him. He's got a good gig, and I'm sure he's got a very positive message. I mean, what should he have? A perpetual scowl? Why shouldn't he be happy? But he does, to me, he does look like if I was going to cast like the devil or the Antichrist, and look, there's even an Illuminati playing card for some online preacher that looks just like Joel Osteen. There's just something synthetic, something almost like he just seems very contrived, like central casting is what I'll say. The brackish cracker says, so who should we fear? I would just say stop being scared. Honestly, if you're in fear, then you're playing into the world stage. Like I'm literally not afraid of nukes, not afraid of terrorists, not afraid of school shooters, not afraid of aliens, not afraid of chemtrails, cirrus clouds. You know, in fact, I find cirrus clouds to be beautiful, and I would debate this. I think it's just factually true that anthropogenic cirrus clouds are works of art to be enjoyed. But there are people who say, no, those are poisonous. If you would cast the MAGA hat, yeah, the Antichrist would have a MAGA hat on. Well, listen, okay, you maybe think that's a joke, right? But look up Revelation. Read the description of the whore of Babylon. Tell me she doesn't have a scarlet across some kind of scarlet cloth across her brow. And what does it say? Babylon the fallen. If America is Babylon, if America needs to be made great again, then America has fallen. So MAGA, make America great again, means make Babylon great again because Babylon has fallen. MAGA also means witch. The whore of Babylon's a witch, making the world drunk with her pharmaceuticals. Trump, MAGA, Scarlet, pharmaceuticals, make Babylon great again because it's fallen. I would say that, yeah, maybe Trump portrayed that aspect of the whore of Babylon, and he sold all these delusional. I'm sorry, but these people who are following this new religion of Trumpianity, so he sold them on this vision of MAGA, and MAGA again is the highest level of Satanism. So yeah, I would say that yeah, if the Antichrist shows up, he would literally be wearing a MAGA hat because it's probably Trump. This dude we talking about mass shootings, and he says some MAGA dude chopped his dad's head off. Yeah, Justin Moan. Justin Moan sawed his dad's head off. His dad was a 22-year veteran of the FBI, and he said, go down to the border, kill the FBI, kill the media. And then he drives 100 miles away to a National Guard base and tries to break in, and then they capture him. I mean, this is the story. I'm not saying I believe it, but this is what was reported. So if you didn't catch that, it's because you haven't been listening. And the idea of America as Babylon in this big story really goes back, I would say, to 1776. We've talked about this stuff extensively. But anyway, the unmuted mind says, if you're going with scripture and prophecy, you could say that Trump would be the false prophet to sell the Neuralink, Elon, Antichrist. Yeah, see, that's conceivable. I would say it'd be somewhat conceivable. Fascinating. Well, Brackish Cracker, hopefully I'll have my phones back on tomorrow. We always open up the platform for people who want to call in. And I definitely am not trying to discourage any debate or discussion. Like when I say that most of the shooters are MAGA adjacent in terms of their ideology, it's because they're written that way. They're designed to intimidate the political left, and they're all fake, but they're all designed with these same characteristics. And sometimes it's subtle, but I've picked up on a lot of these various ways they depict certain things. Sometimes it's in the haircut. A lot of times it's other things that signal what the left would find terrifying. You know, representations of toxic masculinity, for example. Angle of Elevation says, sounds like he wanted to kill his dad. He's blaming Trump and lefties, and they blame Trump for all their evils. No, Moan, Justin Moan had Moan's militia, and he had a militia that and he had a book written about America and a bloody revolution, French Revolution style. So no, this wasn't some dad issue he had, and then he came up with the story. This is an ongoing project. He had music albums, which I was able to hear, that he published on this. So my point of it is, yeah, the guy, no, he had books. He had an Amazon page. He had a Spotify. He had a manifesto. He wrote a book called America's Bloody Revolution. He had a number of videos to go along with it. So there's a whole character package. Now, my point of it is, I don't think it's real. The timing of this militia guy trying to create this call to arms corresponding with this bill that was passing to regulate militias, I'm like, no, this is a political PR stunt. Elephant Tusk says the music was abysmal. Yeah, I thought it'd be cringe-entertaining, like the rap music of that guy who did the July 4th shooting. He had Awake tattooed under one eye. Lean Dion says Moan's music was unlistenable. So these crisis actors are as bad at music as they are at acting. Like they can't cry, they can't sing. Ollie Goering says Moan could be a cipher. M equals J. Egyptian hieroglyphics read in this direction. Justin Moan. Okay, I'd like to look more into that. The severed head thing. Because there are some people who pointed at this guy's dad's severed head, saying it looked like this rubber head that you could buy from this supply shop that supplies these grotesque props. And I'm like, you know, the mouth should be closed, I guess, if you have it in a bag like he had it, but it just looked too perfect. The eyes were also too perfectly closed. It looked kind of rubbery, but it looked gross regardless. Another thing about the head thing, it was during Aquarius. I thought maybe this is some kind of Aquarius reference. But now look, you might think it's a joke or that it's fake, because I know it's fake and it's theater. But I've been listening. I listen to a lot of far left podcasts. Like I'm basically spending most of my time immersed on the fringes on both sides, studying them both. And what I hear on the left are just uncritical recitations of everything on mainstream that supports their side. And they're like, oh, did you hear about these latest MAGAs cutting off the heads of FBI agents? Like that's already a story. They're uncritical about it. Like, look, we're the only critical thinkers. We're the only skeptics in this whole mix. You know, I talk about this stuff with complete irreverence because I know how fake it is. This is the cutting fringe. They'll say, oh, we're the fringe. Well, yeah, it's true. If the status quo is mind control and we've gone as far from that as we can, yeah, we are the fringe. And they use the word extreme to demonize or to, you know, kind of smear people who go against. But what they've done is they've controlled the extremes to the political horseshoe. So the people who see through the mainstream level bullshit in media, in history, and entertainment, who know how contrived it is, if they wake up because they have a conscience, depending on where they lean, they're either going to go woke and have a certain set of conclusions presented to them, or they're going to go red pill and have a separate set of conclusions. And I'm saying that woke extreme and red pill extreme are both controlled opposition points that are still managed from whoever controls from above. And neither of them are within the bounds of truth. They've actually just been redirected back into giving a damn about a bunch of fake stuff. The normies aren't extreme. The normies are in a dream world, and they're comfortable and they're blissful. They have no incentive to wake up. So the woke think they've woken up. But no, they've been given a false awakening. They've been dragged deeper into a subset of the mainstream. The red pill, they didn't wake up. They've entered into a nightmarish version where now everything seemed okay, but now everything's poison. Can't drink the water, can't breathe anything that's come out of the sky these days. It's all chemtrail poison. Everything's poisonous. Everything can kill you. And even if it's not true, if you believe it's true, I don't know if you know or believe in psychosomatics, but what are the long-term effects of having chronic phobias and fears about very basic things and insecurities? Like, I can't think it's a good thing. Sustained high levels of stress, perpetual fight or flight, constant triggering, emotional dysregulation because whatever you see on the TV. And they think that keeps them, that makes them somehow virtuous. Like, oh, I care so much, I'm always agitated. Look at my virtue. Well, look, the news is written far enough in advance that everything that's happening isn't really happening real time. It's all an illusion. There's no point to overreacting emotionally. There really isn't. You have to step outside of this controlled rollout of a prefabricated history. So if you react to the headline, oh, 50 people died, you start crying, you throw money to GoFundMe, you go march against guns. Okay, well, you just had a huge reaction and you don't even know if it actually happened. And occasionally we have examples where you can point out the folly of pre or just reacting to the screen as though it's telling you what happened. Oh, yeah, the screen's a window to the world. If you look through the screen, you can see what's happening anywhere at any distance across the world. So one night you're looking through the window with your family, you're just sitting around looking at your black cube altar in the center of your room. You're like, oh, look, we're looking through the black cube monolith, through the looking glass, through the window, and we can see this horrible tragedy. Jussie Smollett just got lynched by a few MAGA hat wearing racists. We lost a star. So then you could go, out the door at that moment. You could say, look, we got to riot. We got to fight against this systemic oppression because Jussie Smollett just got lynched. And you could also disavow MAGAism, burn your MAGA hats and all this, change your political affiliation. But then you find out 12 hours later, it never happened. It was a hoax. My point of it is, a lot of people respond to these events as they happen real time, trusting it's true, running blind with it, emoting, just spewing loosh, giving out their soul energy to any corporate media entity vampire that's ready to suck it up because they somehow feed off it in some weird, perverse way. And I'm like, why do you guys keep feeding the demiurge? Stop giving little life sacrifices to Satan and unplug from the news cycle of emotional dysregulation. It's a psychotic thing to try to keep up. It makes you crazy. Let's see what we got here. Poland says, Buddy is straight yapping. Yeah, probably. Let's see. Shouldn't you be tracking Taylor Swift's jet? What are you doing over here? I'm like, look, hating Taylor Swift is a current thing. Like, I don't have current thing syndrome. That's one of the things that they get you into, the current thing syndrome. They tell you what to care about at the moment. Nobody knew who she was 3 months ago. At least nobody in MAGA ban. Well, actually, no, they did. There were some incels who thought she was the Aryan princess, but for the most part, she wasn't on the radar. She wasn't relevant at the moment. Now, suddenly she's center stage, and we have to stare at her when we're watching the Super Bowl. Like, they just throw it out there where you can't even escape it. And they do this because they want to antagonize the people on the right and give them Taylor Swift derangement syndrome. And I'm like, I didn't get that. I didn't have enough energy to care about Taylor Swift. And I had somebody call me a Swiftie because I took issue with a meme he posted on Twitter, which I reported, and I got him temporarily banned. But I did it on principle. It wasn't because I was a Swiftie. Diana South says, Monster Inc. cartoon. They show children screams collected for energy. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're collecting not just screams, but I think any kind of any kind of emotion. In fact, I would say this is true just based on the magical philosophy of chaos magic as described by uh, Osman Osper, or more recently, Peter Carroll. And it has to do with this idea of the transference of one's life force, one's soul, one's kia in their terminology, and that it can be um, elevated and somehow exuded in various ways. And fear is one of them, but not the only one. Somebody says I'm a Swiftie. Yeah, look, I have no issue with. I just don't know enough. That's what I'm saying. And I tend not to criticize musicians I don't listen to because I'm not a musicologist and I wasn't there. So I didn't grow up with Swiftie. But I did observe in 2016 this weird fetish that a lot of these 4chan incel types, the frog worshippers, the ones who believe that Trump was their emperor god king. Look, Trump was getting memed into god status by 4chan long before he was selling NFT cards. But back then they used to love her. Poland says, "Bro, I'm yanking your chain. Appreciate it. I'll be handing out wrenches here shortly. I'll have to just do it after the stream. Really, there's nothing you can say that would yank my chain more than it's already been yanked. Like all of our chains have been yanked, if you think about it. And even if you unplug from it, you're still more or less. And this is why what we're doing here is important. In 2020, it became clear to me that even though we may see through it, when the sheep will get stampeded, we all have to go along with it. You just get dragged along, and they give you a stimmy check to keep you quiet. And I remember thinking just how inescapable it was, and how just compliant everybody is. So I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of like a mess. So what we have done since is we have made it a point to form this raft, this net, which we've already had, this think tank concept. But the idea of calling it a raft is simply that since even in 2020, they've just intensified the flood. This is an active measure, liquefaction of reality itself with disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, BS at unprecedented levels so that we can't determine the truth. So what we've done is we've maintained a raft atop the sea of irrelevance, allowing us to maintain a continuity, sort of a parallel history to go along with their fake history in the making. And we've had several years of continuous, nonstop, concurrent, real time coverage of the world stage events as they unfold from the perspective of someone who is objective and not attached to it. And that's our real perspective here. We're not really plugged into this thing to have any sides taken here. Let me read some comments. Elephant Tusk says, I believe that because the majority of the population are NPCs directly connected to the demiurge consciousness system. So that's exactly what David Icke accused Elon Musk of doing. He said Elon Musk is going to plug everybody's minds into Neuralink and Starlink satellites. Here's a secret. Starlink satellites exist, but they're not orbiting satellites. It's just a rebranded version of Loon X, which they discontinued because they said it wasn't profitable. No, Loon X was plenty profitable. There's nothing wrong with it. They just didn't want to. They didn't want to let us know that they could easily just provide internet everywhere with balloons, stratospheric balloons. So they retired that quietly and magically. Oh look, Starlink! All of a sudden, give me a break. Ollie Goering says the IPS think tank is more than yappy. Yeah, especially if you include the voluminous research we've done and posted in places publicly, like Discord. Although they tanked our they tanked our Discords. We've had 150 plus YouTube channels, but no, we do more than yap. We have plans to do more even still. Armando Corona says, hey, I have a question. Never go full loon. Yeah, look at, there was a Swiftie in here. Obviously a troll. It's either a troll or the real Taylor Swift trying to get away from Travis Cringe. Or I've been saying Taylor LaVey. All right. Now, the NPC thing, I don't really necessarily believe in it as a real phenomenon, other than a computer model or a computer game analogy to describe people who don't question the worldview they've been given through the screen since birth, that they were born into. The Truman. And I came up, or I use the term the massified mind. And what is a massified mind? It's the mind that's adhered to the conditioning that will keep it best conformed to the worldview that it will be fed steadily throughout its lifespan through the screen. And the one that doesn't fight it, that doesn't resist it, obviously is going to have no friction and is going to be happy, because the blue pill universe is really happy. The reason why the woke and the red pill are agitated and angry is because they figured out it's BS. And they know everybody's lying. There's gaslighting on all sides. So it's agitating, and it's designed to be that way. And for most people, that enough is just the confrontation with the cognitive dissonance will actually put people back into their blue pill stupor. And most people do prefer the stupor, which is why the red pill and the woke look down on the NPCs. You'll notice many of the self-appointed truthers will look at NPCs and say, "Oh, they're just NPCs. They don't think." No, they do think, but they've accepted a few pretty bad logical fallacies, not dissimilar from people who are plugged into any of the mainstream Abrahamic religions or any mainstream religion or any cult for that matter. Because what I'm saying is that the mainstream media gives us a worldview that is tantamount to a religion. Only it is a religion that is adaptable to everyone right now in the world, no matter what your traditional religion is. It's the ultimate replacement religion, and it's ubiquitous. There is no religious movement out there that denies the existence of outer space as a matter of its founding orthodoxies. Like there's no religion that says the moon landings were fake, said the Lord. No, they all accept it. Like praise the Lord, we made it to the moon. Like space is the new heaven that nobody disputes. No one's gonna, well, there's gonna be fighting over it, but it won't be in the. Going through some comments here to see if I've missed anything. Moody Bug 20 says, what about this? I was thinking earlier about animal species. You know how they claim animals survive these evolutionary tragic events? What if they're just creating these species as we go? I don't know, just thinking out loud. Interesting. Yeah, there's some fascinating conjecture. I find it all interesting. I'm more interested in starting from ground zero, which is now, and retro, you could say retro auto hoaxing. And I definitely have serious questions about the timelines they've given us. I even dispute the premise that Earth is a discrete object. Like what I mean is that until I'm convinced of a curve, which I haven't seen, and if you have, stop lying. Um, until I see that, I have no reason to presuppose it's a discrete object floating in space. I have more reason to suspect that maybe we're the bottom of the universe, whatever that means, maybe the bottom layer. And I'm only suggesting this, and I've arrived at this for two reasons. And it has to do with NASA and their symbolism. And and escape velocity being Mach 33, and the correlation between the tree of life and the solar system and the idea of the ascension from matter to light. There's something in their own symbolism that would be very suggestive, in my view, that maybe the world we're in more closely approximates, at least in their view, again, the cosmology inferred by the Kabbalistic tree of life. And along with that, I look at John Dee, and I've been looking at him very closely, and it gets me thinking, because there's some evidence that maybe he didn't quite go full into the Copernican revolution, which makes no sense, since he was an advisor to Mercator. It seemed that more like he clung to his occult philosophies. And so I've been looking at his work, and he seemed to believe that we live on a plane and that we are at a certain level of manifestation, which we experience as, biological terrestrial plane as biological entities, and we're bound by our senses and maybe our higher cognitive faculties. But beyond this, we don't have any real connection to the spiritual, generally speaking. But that, in his view, we're just a lowest expression of essentially like a beam or a ray of light or something at that. There are levels to this, but we're just on the bottom. And I look at his concept, though, of the universe being divided into these basic elements of fire, water, earth, and air, which is pretty much the main division of the world into these central elements in all of Western occultism. Because John Dee is sort of the godfather of Western occultism. Precedes Aleister Crowley. But his view of the world is of great interest to me, and it almost kind of veers into what we would now call panpsychism. But the idea that we live in an intelligent universe and everything is intrinsically meaningful, nothing is meaningless, and that it is our perception of meaning, our connection of these various points of information from the perspective of a perceiver that somehow lights up, that we perceive slash experience real time now, but it's manifesting as we go. That the universe doesn't quite exist in the sense that that we're supposed to believe. Is it a bunch of balls in space falling and eventually it's going to collapse on itself, or is it rather some type of place where we pass through and experience it at a very low level? And this is just conjecture. Like, I don't know, but I'm just looking at the best minds on the topic that have addressed this. The most infamous or the most reputable people in the fields of magical philosophies who are supposedly able to figure these things out on some level, who have some grasp of it, who've delved into this. This is what they've arrived at. And this is still really the backbone of what seems to be what the high level occultists actually think and believe. And look, you've heard the phrase, if you've ever looked at any new age stuff, and this comes out of the astral plane. The astral plane isn't an astral sphere. There's no description in any of the writings of seeing a ball. It's always this idea of levels of density. Anyway, it's all mysticism, and we're looking at minds from hundreds of years ago, and who knows? I mean, a lot of their stuff was just obviously ludicrous. What I find most interesting about John Dee, though, was his use of the black mirror, like an iPhone, more or less. Elephant Tusk says, dream world or spiritual world is more aligned with astral than there are thought form dimensions. But okay, here's the thing. We see all kinds of symbolism of the world being represented as a cube, a black cube. And the idea of the black cube, the material realm, 666 carbon, the number of man, the number of manifestation, it's all very, I think, compatible with John Dee's concept of the material realm being conceptualized as a cube, as in you're on a plane with layers. So you might look at it as vertically ascending layers, but it's ultimately boxed in through these four pillars or watchtowers. Now, this is his model as explained in his magical philosophies. And I went through a lot of his books because I went to this event and I donated and I got a stack of these books. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? How does this all work? Is there any logic to it? Because, we talk about it. We see these weird symbols tossed around, and I'm like, well, what's behind it? And my research, I think, into specifically runes and magical languages and sigil magic has, I think, added a certain level of understanding to what they're really doing with some of the, meme magic, for example, force meming. Like, for example, in the last 2 weeks, we've all been inundated with the same face. You couldn't hide from Taylor Swift. And I happen to think too, on some level, as in subconsciously, we may take in everything, because your consciousness is not like a spotlight going out into the dark and then selectively deciding what to perceive. It's actually a filter, like an aperture, and you're having to select from this vast field to make coherent sense. So we take in far more than we can actually process, is my point, as far as just sensory information overall. And I think the programmers know this. So whether you want it to be or not, they can put anything in your head. And we all got inundated with all kinds of Taylor Swift for some weird reason. Well, that reason transcends just her as an actress, somebody selling tickets. She's also, I think, compatible or a continuation of the image we were shown this summer, which was Barbie. And what does Barbie really represent? Uh, Barbie is not just Barbie feminism. And there's a reason why they put Barbie and Oppenheimer side by side, the Barbieheimer, the splitting of the atom, the splitting of the nuclear family. Barbie is the horror of Babylon, the horror of Babylon. And even the color pink has very specific significance in this. But there's a reason why they brought this idol out at this time, who makes men superfluous, does her own thing. But at the very beginning of the movie, and it's very notable that the movie opens up with a 2001 Space Odyssey monolith unveiling, but she's the monolith. And as the narrator tells the little children how much of a boring life they'll have of pure drudgery if they just have babies and become mothers, they all start dashing the heads of their baby dolls against the rocks. And Barbie looks on approvingly at this mass infanticide. So they're sacrificing their babies for a life of convenience. They might as well have had these girls throw their babies into like a iron Barbie cage, burning in the bellies like Moloch. Like that's what they're doing, passing the children to the fires of Moloch, but they were actually crushing the baby dolls' heads. So this again, this is like a continuation of again Barbie feminism, and Swift has been targeted by the MAGA ban. In fact, she's been derided by some of its leadership. Oh, she's 34. She's not married. She has no kids. She doesn't need men. She's drinking on TV. She's a bad representation she's a bad role model for young girls. She's not traditional values. She's riding with Biden. You see what they've done here. They've created this polarizing character, but it's consistent with this Barbie character who goes opposite of traditional MAGA values. Looney Bin says, I was on YouTube then. I don't know. I'm not in Kansas anymore. Well, look, you can say we're crazy, right? Because we don't believe the mainstream news. And I can understand where you're coming from. People who are, for example, living in bunkers because they believe that Jesus is coming back and he's going to wipe everybody out next week. They think we're crazy because we're not in bunkers. And I would say that the people who are quick to mock are, I'm sorry, but just woefully uninformed. Like, really, what is mockable is your lack of situational awareness.